start.
Buenas noches, señor Alfaro. Me llamo
Good evening.
Trabajo para Publimetro de
My name is
Brasil.
Fernando Valequivados. I work for Publimetro in Brazil.
Por el resultado.
Congratulations on the result, on your game plan.
Menos grandes del campo de juego.
How did the smaller size of the pitch help you to build a defensive strategy and to block every shot? How did it allow you to achieve it? Good evening, everyone. Well, on the pre-match conference, even I read that the field dimensions were 100 by 64, if I'm not wrong, but I asked our driver after the press conference to stop on the field because I wanted to take a look at the turf to see its condition and the dimensions. And I noticed that there was a little space between the box and the wings, and it is very important if you try to spread your game as Brazil does defensively. Well, for a line of 5, those spaces are shorter, and in a line of 4 you can have 5 or 6 meters on the field that allow you to move laterally in a different way. We can conspire about that, but we can come up with conspiracies about that, but I think that it doesn't give you more or less on the vertical passes, on the third man movement with pivoting, but I did have very clear their strategy. If Brazil would play on the inside, it is because they want to have a 1v1 on the flanks, and that is why we have to close the midfield to avoid them finding the spaces. And when we went through the flanks, we had to be ready for Rafinha, Vinicius, or Rodrigo, that were changing positions for them to find those shifts on the sectors. And sometimes it's easy to just fall back on, well, the lack of spaces favored the team. Maybe not, because given the execution of Brazil, I would have preferred for them to have a wider field because of how they were doing with the set aside. It was disallowed, and I think it could have been different. They went directly to the far post, and they were always on the far post, and I think maybe it was a disadvantage, and well, the wider field would allow us to have Brazil higher up and have more room on behind the defenders. And I think it's easier to say that the lack of space favored Costa Rica, but I think that there was a good job done by the defenders, by the midfield, when they were doubling the marks, and how they played in staggered fashion to limit the chances that Brazil did have.
Buenas noches, Anthony Porras en vivo para Radio Colombia.
Gustavo, good evening, Anthony Porras, Radio Colombia in Costa Rica. Today, it was a great exam for many players. It was a very difficult test for them. So what is your take or your takeaway from this match, and how can we increase the attack? Well, one thing that I mentioned in the first half, do you want me to, I asked the players if they wanted the truth or not, and they said we want the truth. And I told them if we can keep up this pace, we will probably lose. If we don't force Brazil to go back, we might not be able to endure 90 minutes. They can... we have to force Brazil to back up. This is what we need to do. The same thing happened when we played against Ecuador. In the qualifiers, we had a very similar match. Brazil was able to set the tone after 75 minutes. And I said the same, if we don't make them back up, if we don't cross the ball, if we don't make them uncomfortable, then we won't win. Then in Copa America, we tied 1-1, and then the next one, I think in the qualifiers, so there was a 1-1 draw, and we had already interpreted how to make Brazil back down, and I think that this is a similar start to that situation. Today, this was a test, and except in the case of Calvo and Joel, for the rest, this was the first battle of this nature with all the responsibility that entails. And I think the bets were 80-20, or I don't know, 80 something to 18. And the difference, the spread was very wide, and we knew that. And on the pitch, we had to do everything possible to measure up, and we did that when we didn't have the ball. We didn't do that when we had the ball, because it's not that Brazil is not retreating. It is their strategy to let's go, because they leave 4 men high to attack vertically. So we did not need to rush to go on the sides to finish the play, but I think that is still something we need to manage. That is something to improve on. And I was telling the players that this match, this challenge, should help us grow. And hopefully in the future we will come across Brazil again in a different type of tournament, and Brazil will continue to be Brazil, and maybe it will be even better. But if we capitalize on this, we will have enough time to improve. And I do think that this was possible, this was probable, because I've been here, I've been in this type of situation, I know that this is possible. But the players were in the right mindset. They kept their composure. They knew how to deal with that level of uncomfort, and we still need to work on some other elements. Andrés González, we're here for Teletica Radio. Maybe you envisioned how the match was going to evolve, but the courage of the players and of the young players is very important, because it's easy to come up with a game plan, but you had many young talents. And do you think this is a prize for them, that they gave everything on the pitch? And do you see Costa Rica in a different light now? Because we are talking all the time about Brazil, Colombia, and the group, but do you think that the people will see Costa Rica in a different light? Well, I think that is a great comment, because it is a reward for these players. And if you had a look on their face when they were exchanging jerseys with admiration with other players, and some players in Brazil can play the Ballon d'Or, or they are players of very high standard, and this was a test, a very important test for them. Axel Quiroz told me that he had to mark Benito, and I told him, you have the conditions to do so and the capability to do so, trust in yourself. And he said at the end of the match, coach, we can do it, I can do it. And I think it is a great reward and a prize for them. I think that this result does not change where we are on this process. I told you, I am trying to find answers in this tournament, and the answers may be found in the responses of the players in this situation. And for them, this was a great test, a very strong one, and hopefully they will start looking at Costa Rica with respect, because they will fight until the end. They will there is a very nice Costa Rican culture of battling until the end, of never giving up. This has happened in knockouts, in qualifiers, in very in different and difficult situations. I hope that these results help to earn the respect they deserve. But a mistake would be that mistake would be to think that given this draw or given the fact that Brazil did not beat us, we have now all the solutions and all the answers. Then we would be wrong. This is the onset. This is the kickoff point for what we are building. We have a long path ahead. This is a day by day evolution. We are just laying the foundations, and we already have a group. Now we have to find a team, because we have to find football solutions for football issues. Now, today, Brazil or maybe Paraguay or Colombia will impose different game plans, but we are here to show that we are not here on a tour. We're here to win every game, and we are going to wage every battle, and we're going to hope for playing the final, and it's an attitude that is unnegotiable for us.
Buenas tardes, mister. Primero, antes que nada, felicitarte por el
Good
partido que hiciste.
afternoon, coach.
Quería hacer hincapié
Congratulations on
básicamente
the
en
match.
bastante de los jóvenes, que
And
era un gran partido, pero me gustaría
you
hacer
were
hincapié
just talking about the young talent, but I want to talk about Jalen Mitchell. He managed to play against Vinicius, Rodrigo, Enrique. How would you define his play today, debuting in front of the world? Well, in Argentina, we said he got to dance with the ugliest one, or, well, the most complicated one. This is a saying in Argentina, but honestly, he had no marking reference. And when you give Jalen a player for him to mark, he concentrates on that player and he neutralizes that player. He can anticipate. He has great aerial balls. He has a great speed. Maybe, of course, he needs more experience, and that comes with the number of matches. But, well, there were some situations where I told him, if we are dominating the ball in the flanks, don't take out your leg. And sometimes doing that is cutting the ball. And if you do that, they touch the ball and then they create an imbalance and you generate a foul. And you have to dribble and close the space. And he conceded 2 fouls in that aspect. But for me, it was difficult, of course, to mark and do that, because Rodrigo was starting in that position. Sometimes Rodrigo was the left winger, and then Vinicius could be the left winger and go towards his position. And he always had to give opportunities for Axel Quiroz to anticipate Vinicius or to take him far. And he had to go behind his back to be a double mark. So you have to understand the game for that. And I think it is one of the great demonstrations by Jalen, because sometimes he had to be a center back with a mark, without a mark. Sometimes he had to start playing the ball or with a vertical pass. And then there was one ball that went down and got to him, and it ended in a great play. So I have no doubts about him. I called him up when he was still playing in a very small team. And we took him to a small cycle of the national team, and then he was one of the main players for Costa Rica in the second half that year. And with that continuity, well, we called him again for the national team today. And if this player was in a different football league, they would look at him with a different eye. And we want to show that the Costa Rican player is a good player, and this young player can always play, provided that he's intelligent to continue incorporating new talents and learning and growing, because I have no doubts he can make it in the European football. For Radio Venezuela, it is a very important point for Costa Rica. On paper, Brazil was the most difficult opponent for us, and you were just talking about double marking. I mean, Vinicius was almost annulled during the entire match. He had 0 shots on target, or 0 shots, Vinicius, right? And is this game plan specific for these circumstances, given the size of the field and the nature of the opponent being very offensive in the case of Brazil? Or do you think you could also implement this against Colombia and Paraguay, taking into account the positive result today? Well, yes, we were Bruce Willis in the sixth sense. Well, the only one that did not know that he was dead, it was him, right? Everyone thought we were dead before the movie started in our case. So we have to respond to the play proposed by the opponent. Now we're going to play as Luis Diaz, one of the best wingers in the world, and Luis Diaz plays also in teaming up with Arias, with James Rodriguez, based on a structure that goes with him, Mojica creating chances, and we were playing with a different game plan. We had a midfield with 2 midfielders and 2 wingers, and this changed given the distribution in the field of Brazil. So that is why we modified our own midfield. We removed 1 winger and we put 1 inside midfielder, and I think that went against other priorities of or offensive possibilities of the team. And I could only watch 10-20 minutes of Colombia against Paraguay, but we will analyze it in depth, and every history is different. Maybe the match against the same opponent with the same protagonist could end up differently, and we need to prepare for Colombia, for Paraguay in this light, and to me, it depends on how we structure the midfield. You want to play, and today there was a different hierarchy between the teams, and we knew that we were going to play in our half more than in Brazil's half. But when it is more even, to me, the one that wins the center third, the midfield third, wins the match. And sometimes you can prepare with 2 midfielders and 3 wingers, or you can have a different structure, and that will come up out of the analysis when we decide what's best for the match. Thank you very much, head